Lovely. So, I told you about the story of the two wolves. Now, sometimes when you hear this story, it's about a white wolf and a black wolf fighting each other. Just this week, I watched a movie called The New Mutants. Now, you know, one of the main characters was a Native American. Her name was Danielle Moonstar. And she said, there's a Native American proverb that says, inside every person there are two bears locked in combat for your soul. One bear is all things good, compassion, love, trust. The other is all things evil, fear, shame, destruction. And the movie ends with her answering the question of who wins of those two bears. And as in our story, it's the one you feed. And I'm not going to ruin the story for you. You might watch the movie sometime. I don't know how many of you watch mutant stories, but anyway, it caused her a lot of problems to have these two bears fighting, and her bad bear caused her a lot of serious problems. Anyway, you watch it. You see what you think. But this story that's widely accepted as indigenous is not an indigenous story. Now, what difference does that make? It's a misattributed story. I mean, I've heard this story 1,000 times, and you know, I feel like it has taught me a lesson about something that's going on within me. What difference? What difference does it make if it's a Native American wisdom story or not? Well, when I was thinking about this, I thought I should turn to indigenous people for their thoughts about this story. And so I found this blog written by indigenous people. It's called Indigenous XCA. And they have various indigenous authors. The author that I'm going to share with you today, his name is written up there, and I'm going to try not to butcher it. Pita Tik Wik Osi Sam. I probably butchered it a little bit, but that's his name there. And he wrote about this story because it was important to him. And he said these misattributed stories aren't going to pick us up and throw us across a flight of stairs, but they do perpetuate ignorance in our cultures. Cultures, that's plural. Not only do they confuse non-natives about our beliefs and our actual oral traditions, they confuse some natives too. There are many disconnected native peoples who, for a variety of reasons, were not raised in their cultures. It's not an easy task for them to reconnect. And a lot of people start by trying to find as much information as they can about the nation they came from. It can be exciting and empowering for them to find a story like this, if it's supposed to be from a nation that they were part of. But I could analyze this story all day to point out how Christian and Western influences run all the way through it, and how these principles in the story contradict and overshadow indigenous ways of knowing. Let's just sum it up quickly and call it what it is. Colonialism. The replacement of real indigenous stories with Christian-influenced Western moral tales. That's colonialism. These kinds of fake stories are literally drowning out indigenous voices. So now I wonder about the usefulness of the story, but in a different way. Am I just taking in this Christian-influenced colonialist story that essentially fetishizes an indigenous culture because it offers me an easy way to categorize what is within myself? Because for whatever reason, I feel like I need to identify the good and bad within me, to reject the bad parts and support the good parts. And look, here's an ancient teaching story that reassures me and other people that this is something we've been dealing with for thousands of years. Thing is, I bought into this Western cultural story. If I'd known when I first heard it, or when I heard it at some point in time before now, that it was written by an evangelical author, I might have just ignored it. But it was packaged as an indigenous tale. And so I brought it in. And now that I brought it in, what do I do with it? Well, when I get in those kind of conundrums, I go to a religious tradition that I find that helps me, especially when I'm uncertain about something. So I seek wisdom from the Buddhist tradition. So I looked through Buddhist quotes and stories and thought, is there anything that might help me as I figure out what to do with this story now? The Buddha once said, be vigilant. Guard your mind against negative thoughts. What negative thoughts, I asked? Are those the violent thoughts, or the lustful thoughts, or the envious thoughts? Is the Buddha referring to thoughts that maybe other people have tried to persuade me are important? Or the thoughts that bubble up within me from past experiences, both good and bad? I realize that our mental states are affected by what we see, hear, read every day. But how do we sort out and categorize what is good and what is bad? How do we know if it aids us in becoming who we are or feeding who we don't want to be? Am I buying into this good wolf, bad wolf story by remaining in an either-or mindset? What if there's a not that good but not that bad wolf inside me now? What would Buddha say about that? Unfortunately, I don't know. And I'm still in the conundrum. So I decided, okay, let's take it out of me and out of people. Let's take it out into this congregation. Maybe that would help. I mean, I'm a minister. I think in those terms, like, you know, if it's, you know, in me, and maybe it's in a group of people. So I started to apply this, you know, good wolf, bad wolf thing to UU Miami. And I started thinking about, how do we decide who we are? And how do we decide how we will unbecome who we don't want to be? I mean, do we sit down and we talk about, this is what we want to be, and this is who we don't want to be? We might say, for instance, as a group, we might say, well, let's accept the golden rule. I mean, we're all kind of okay with that, treating other people as we want to be treated. Maybe that's a place to start. Or do we start with who we don't want to be? But if we go that route, if we want to go that route of who we don't want to be, then I want to put in a simple rule to start us with. Let's not attribute who we want to be as good and who we don't want to be as bad. I think that's a slippery slope and too simplistic. It can lead to assumptions and a host of other moral challenges, let's call them. Prejudice, bias. That kind of simplistic thinking of good and bad can lead us to things like, oh, well, we don't want to be a Protestant Christian church. And it would be easy to slip then into Protestant Christian churches are bad, which could lead to us thinking that Protestant Christian churches are not people, but an object, a thing. And when we start getting to that place of us and them, it's easy to ridicule and belittle someone else without feeling guilt or remorse over our actions. And I go back to our principles, particularly our first principle says we treat others with worth and dignity, and ridiculing, belittling those who are different from us is not affirming or promoting our principles. That's not who I am, and I don't think that's who all of us are. So I'm still in this quandary about this good wolf, bad wolf thing, and about whether it could apply to this congregation. And so I reached a point where I thought, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to call the UUA. Figure they might be able to give me something. I mean, there are some wise people out there. And I got in touch with Connie Goodbread. Now, she's the co-lead of the southern region of the Unitarian Universalist Association. And I asked her, what are some ways a congregation can decide who they are and who they are not? And I thought she'd answer that question. But she started talking about what vision is. She said, vision is putting into words what we want to amplify in the world. And then she said, and mission. You need to know about mission. It's describing who we want to be as we live out our vision. So to put it all together, who do we want to be as we amplify something out into the world? She didn't talk about the white wolf or the black wolf or the good or right or evil or bad or wrong. Nothing about ascertaining who we are not. Nothing about putting ourselves into categories so we can choose to decide which part to feed. I wondered with her, how could we here at UU Miami figure out what we want to amplify in the world? And figure out who we are and who we'll become as we amplify our message out into the world. And she said, don't ask what. ask why. And I said, why what? Why do people come to UU Miami? Why do people support this congregation? Why is this congregation important to Miami? She said, those are the big whys. Now, if you ask people in this congregation why they might come on a Sunday morning or watch us virtually, you might say, well, maybe they drink coffee while they watch. They like to drink coffee. Maybe not so much right now. I think everybody's kind of deciding to be healthier, and I don't think answers like that really answer the question of the big why. Some people, some people as we start talking about why do you come are less concrete like that, but they might say, I like the music, or I like the religious education classes or exploration classes, or I like Sunday worship, or unless I thought about this because she kept asking me why over and over and over again. And she said, think about it. Those kinds of answers. I like the music, or I like the worship, or I like the education, don't really seem to touch the core of what she was trying to explain as the big whys. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to share with you a short video, it's just a couple of minutes, about the big whys. It helped me to understand this big why thing. Let's watch it now.
And it's probably the world's simplest idea. I call it the golden circle. Why, how, what? This little idea explains why some organizations and some leaders are able to inspire where others aren't. Let me define the terms really quickly. Every single person, every single organization on the planet knows what they do, 100%. Some know how they do it, whether you call it your differentiating value proposition or your proprietary process or your USP. But very, very few people or organizations know why they do what they do. And by why, I don't mean to make a profit. That's a result. It's always a result. By why, I mean what's your purpose? What's your cause? What's your belief? Why does your organization exist? Why do you get out of bed in the morning? And why should anyone care? Well, as a result, the way we think, the way we act, the way we communicate is from the outside in. It's obvious. We go from the clearest thing to the fuzziest thing. But the inspired leaders and the inspired organizations, regardless of their size, regardless of their industry, all think, act, and communicate from the inside out. Let me give you an example. I use Apple because they're easy to understand and everybody gets it. If Apple were like everyone else, a marketing message from them might sound like this. We make great computers. They're beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. Want to buy one? Meh. And that's how most of us communicate. That's how most marketing is done, that's how most sales is done, and that's how most of us communicate interpersonally. We say what we do, we say how we're different or how we're better, and we expect some sort of behavior, a purchase, a vote, something like that. Here's our new law firm. We have the best lawyers with the biggest clients. We have, we always perform for our clients, do business with us. Here's our new car. It gets great gas mileage. It has, leather seats. Buy our car. But it's uninspiring. Here's how Apple actually communicates. Everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. The way we challenge the status quo is by making our products beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. We just happen to make great computers. Want to buy one? Totally different, right? You're ready to buy a computer from me. All I did was reverse the order of the information. What it proves to us is that people don't buy what you do, people buy why you do it. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. This explains why every single person in this room is perfectly comfortable buying a computer from Apple.
looking at this short video helped me to get a clearer sense of why. It's at the core of who we are, who we want to be. And if that's where we start, whatever we do will become known for that. Not the actions we take or how we take those actions, but why. He asks us to consider our purpose, our causes, our common beliefs and values. He says by clarifying these, we might attract people here in this congregation who have a common purpose, who have common causes, common beliefs, common values to ours. And I don't think we're talking about the Unitarian Universalist 7 principles. I don't think the principles are a foundation of UU Miami. They might help hold up the walls, but I don't think they're the foundation. And I think we have to drill deeper within ourselves to find out what that why is. And then we can act from that why. And we can decide how to do things from that why. Simon later in his presentation talks about Martin Luther King Jr. And he said 250,000 people came to Washington, D.C. to listen to him. Not just because he was a civil rights leader, not because he was a good preacher, though those were both true. They joined him because he touched something in them. And what they heard from him, what they heard was something that was inside themselves. They showed up for what they believed could happen in America. You see, King preached, I have a dream, not I have a plan. We, individually and collectively, need to drill down to what are our values, our dreams, the causes that bring us here each Sunday or Wednesday or whatever day or night we arrive here. We need to drill down and discover why we want UU Miami to exist, to thrive, to make a difference in the world. Through this process of asking the big whys, we will both individually and collectively live out our values and hone our purpose. We will find others who share our values and purpose. And we will become known for our values and purpose. The answers to our whys that we find, we look within and find, will inspire us and inspire others who look at us. So, I'm just not saying this, I'm not just saying this theoretically. I'm saying this because I want you all, online and here today, to join in a discussion of whys after the service. We're going to do a visioning workshop. It's just going to be an hour and a half of your time, starting at about 12:30. And we're going to discuss the whys. And we're going to try to figure out what we want to amplify from ourselves and from our congregation. What values or dreams are we trying to amplify into the world? And as we do that, we'll find out, I think, who we will become. And you will find out who you want to become. as we do this together.